Hey everyone, welcome back. So today is going to be a different kind of video that I wanted to do for a while, but just kept putting it off for some reason. And we're going to be discussing about the DLC for Kingdoms and Castles. A lot of people didn't really know there was a DLC. I don't know why I kept calling it a mod, but some people kept asking. They thought it was a mod. And how you normally access that would be, of course, going to the Steam page, or you can go down here on the bottom left. And I think you can click on this. I don't know, but it gives me a check mark. And we're just going to be going over the resource values for them, what they do, what they look like, and how you can properly use them, maybe even showing some builds that you can do with them. And of course, I do have I think a no limitations mod, I think that's what it was called, and that really does help out with this mod pack. And keep in mind, it does not work. I just said mod pack again, this DLC. And keep in mind, it does not work with certain mods, specifically the elevation mod. So keep that in mind. Okay, so I developed this little kind of like base green plate to kind of show off the different things that you would normally see in the DLC. So first it would be in the advanced town section down over here in the middle, and then you click on that and then it would all pretty much be in the parks and the statues. So we're going to go over the statues really quickly and then also the parks. So first, when you get in here, it's going to have a nice little tree indicator just telling you which one is part of the DLC. So the first one we have is a reclining lion. So pretty much this one is pretty nice. Let me actually show you the resource cost for each and every one of these. So, you know, nice little detail with the shield, and, you know, it's about, oh, wrong one. And it's about, you know, 75 stone and 100 gold. And same with some of these are all roughly the same area. So this one, the mounted knight, this one is about also, well, that's not good. Well, we'll just build it for free. There we go. And this one is pretty nice. The statues are pretty nice looking. I'll just place them down right now to show you guys because, you know, it's pretty nice to have these around, especially like in front of your castle. I've done some pretty cool builds with these, especially like in my longer gameplays. They're really nice, especially this one right here, the Regal Lady. And then we have the gargoyle, which is, you know, pretty nice. I normally don't use him, but I mean, he would be pretty nice looking on a castle wall. So then the next one after that, we have the gnome, which I normally don't use unless it's for like a nice little water placement. We have a nice cool fish here. This one I actually used quite a bit, and yeah, it's not that bad. And then of course we have the obelisk, which, you know, is pretty, you know, stony, I want to say. I don't really have any words for that one. Of course, we have a tombstone, and we have well, the Victory Valkyrie is not part of that, so ignore that one. So when it comes to resource costs for these guys, they're normally pretty decent, mainly in the stone department. They're pretty hefty. So we went over the reclining lion, 75 to 100 and 100 gold. The horse, the bounded knight, is about 100 to 125 gold. The knight is 50-50, Regal Lady 50-50, 50-50, and pretty much these smaller statues over here aren't really that much, because then after this point they're like about 35 to 50 stone and about 25 to 75 gold. So these statues are pretty cool that I've used in some of my builds, especially when I'm trying to do like designs around the water. So it's pretty much a decoration DLC. So if you don't really care about decoration of your city, then this DLC doesn't really matter to you. But, you know, it's still pretty cool, well-designed statues that I kind of, you know, work into my building. So after this, we're going to be going into just pretty much its own section, the parks. Now, this one is quite, you know, something. Now, a lot of these I don't even use because of how they are, but I'm just going to place them all down so you have a rough idea of what they look like. So, of course, we have the banner, which is pretty nice. I never really use it that often. We have the blazer, which is, I use it once in a while, but it's nothing really too, you know, nice. We have the pine tree, which is pretty nice. I use both these trees actually quite often, so I don't have to, you know, wait for one, you know, natural tree to go in. We have bushes, which is pretty nice when it comes to like decorating. Like I can show you in a moment once we were done with all this. We have the stone spike. Then after that, we have the small trees. And as you can see, there's a lot more in the park section than the, you know, statue one. We have the stone tile, which I actually really do like when it comes to decorating, like kind of like the underneath of my building. So it actually looks like there's pathways instead of just the grass. which is pretty nice. I've done it a few times in my past gameplays. And then, of course, row of trees, reflecting pond, which is actually one of my favorite things in the DLC. It's pretty nice. You can definitely utilize these really well, especially these little park sections like the spike row and the shrub row. Definitely the shrub row is pretty good too. And then, of course, we have the bigger ones like the pond. I'm actually going to put it over here for better, so it's easier to look at. And then, of course, we have the tree of happiness. And we also, lastly, have the goblet of flowers. So, as you can see, all of these do give a happiness bonus. I don't believe they're their own separate thing. I believe they're all just one collective happiness. So, keep that in mind. But pretty much, this is all the DLC items that are included. And you can do a lot with these, actually. Like, you could put some of these statues in front of here on the corners. So then it looks like, a special little tree. But we'll go into that a little bit more later. So let's turn this off and check out the resource cost. So of course, these are pretty decent. Of course, there's a mix between wood and stone cost, not as demanding as the statues, like this one right here, 10 wood, 5 stone, 35 gold. And yes, they all pretty much need gold. So this one's 20 stone, 35, and just kind of like a range of this one's actually pretty cheap. It's pretty easy resource cost, especially when you're later game. These are just pretty much minuscule amounts of resources until you get to the bigger stuff like the pond, tree of glory, and the goblet of flowers. I think costs a little bit more resources, but it's mainly in the gold department where it really kind of tanks it a little bit more. But this is pretty much it. To be honest, I mean, I don't know if they're gonna still update the game, and in my opinion, not until I hear more news. I wouldn't really get these unless you really care about aesthetics when it comes to the game. Because if you're just a brutalist and you just play the game just to play the game, the DLC wouldn't really be in your favor unless you want to try something new. I believe the DLC was $5. I got it on a sale, but that's pretty much it. I really thought, I kind of wish there was more, but then, there's not really much they could add unless it was specific buildings and stuff. But, even then, I still look like a lot of the, just the designs of these, for example, the statues, and then also some of these, even though I just never use some of these, like the brushes, but, that's just me. So here's some rough ideas what you could do with some of the DLC, um, things that come with the DLC. Now, I do, like I said before, I have the no limitations mod, so I can build inside of all these things, and that's really what I think the purpose of that mod should be really for, and that is for just putting things inside of doing cool stuff like this, because we have something like this where we have a nice rub trees along the side of the statue, which really makes sense for this one since it's a pretty long one. And we can pretty much just put 2 rows of trees inside of this, and it's really nice looking actually, because it really gives it some more just more colorful look, because it's better than just a gray statue. And of course, we can even add a nice little bottom to this, which is just like a stone spike, and it looks like it's actually part of the statue. And of course, we have this over here, and as you can see, I also have some road connecting in between it, which, by the way, the roads do connect to the DLC, so it actually makes it look pretty clean like this right here, which I really do love. You could just do something like this to make your houses more, desirable looking. And you don't even have to follow this exactly. You could even just put these shrubberies inside the house to make it, a little bit more lively. And then, as you can see over here, kind of the same thing I did with this statue over here, and kind of just give it more of a, better feeling, just nice some bushes outside of it, kind of making it look a little better. And then of course you can do stuff like this, which you don't really, well, you do need the mod for, and pretty much you're putting the knights on top of this nice little greenery area, the bushes, and then of course you're having a pond surrounded by some of the stuff you see in the DLC, like a shrub row and even obelisks in those corners, which is pretty neat. So I feel like this is a really good DLC mod. But sadly, I don't think the game is being updated anymore, so it's kind of like, oh no. If I put this out earlier, I feel like like my thoughts would have definitely changed over time. But you know, it's a lot of creative things that you could do with this. Like you can even still put it inside of this. I built this for some reason, but it looks a lot better with these guys here. So it's up to you what you guys, you know, think of the DLC, if it should have needed more and stuff like that for the pricing. But honestly, it is still pretty cool to use. I would say get it if you're into, you know, aesthetically building in kingdoms and castles. But if you're just just going straight forward for survival and just testing your wits, definitely I would say don't get the DLC. But you know, that's just me. Don't listen to everything I say. And that's pretty much it. So it was going to be a quick little, you know, review of the DLC and what you can expect, what the resources cost were. And I think we pretty much touched on those pretty well because, you know, it's not much, to be honest, but it's something. So have a good one, guys, and take care.